The first months were brutal. My roommate was a girl from Mumbai who spoke English with an accent that made me feel embarrassed about my own careful textbook pronunciation. She had clothes I'd only seen in magazines and stories about weekend trips to shopping malls that cost more than my father earned in a month. She wasn't unkind, but the gap between our worlds was so vast that conversation became an exercise in translation. I struggled with everything. The professor spoke too quickly and assumed knowledge I didn't have. The library was so enormous I got lost trying to find basic textbooks. Other students formed study groups and social circles that seemed to exclude anyone who didn't already know the unspoken rules of city life. I spent most evenings alone in my hostel room, calling home on the single phone in the corridor when I could afford the charges. "Beta, are you eating enough?" my mother would ask during our brief conversations. "Yes, Mama," I'd lie, because the truth was that I often skipped meals to save money, and because the hostel food bore no resemblance to anything that felt like home. "Are you making friends?" "Yes, Mama." I'd lie again, because I didn't want her to worry about how lonely I felt in a city of millions. But slowly, gradually, I began to find my footing. I discovered the free evening tutorials offered by senior students. I learned to navigate the massive library system. I found a part-time job tutoring younger students in English, which provided both extra income and a boost to my confidence. Most importantly, I met other students who, like me, carried the dreams and expectations of small towns on their shoulders. There was Ravi from a village in Rajasthan, whose father had sold 2 acres of farmland to fund his son's engineering education. There was Meera from a fishing village in Kerala, who spoke 3 languages fluently but had never seen snow until she came to Delhi. There was Arjun from a coal mining town in Jharkhand, whose calloused hands told the story of summers spent working in the mines to earn college money. We formed our own small community within the vast anonymity of the university. We shared cheap meals from street vendors and celebrated each other's small victories. When Ravi aced his thermodynamics exam, we pooled our money to buy him a small cake. When Meera published her first poem in the university magazine, we stayed up all night reading it aloud and debating its meaning. When Arjun got an internship at a prestigious company, we cheered as if we had all won the lottery. Through these friendships, I began to understand that leaving home didn't mean abandoning it. Each of us carried our small towns with us like invisible luggage. Ravi still woke up before sunrise, a habit from years of helping with farm chores. Meera cooked fish curry in the hostel kitchen that transported her back to her mother's kitchen by the sea. Arjun saved every rupee with the careful precision of someone who understood the real value of money. I found myself doing the same thing. I bought jasmine flowers from the campus vendor every Friday, the way my mother had done for as long as I could remember. I called home every Sunday evening at exactly 7 o'clock, maintaining the rhythm of family dinner time even from hundreds of kilometers away. I kept a small photograph of the banyan tree on my desk, a reminder of the shade under which I had first dreamed of this larger world. My academic performance improved as I learned to translate my small-town work ethic into university success. I discovered that growing up in Madas had given me advantages I hadn't recognized. I was used to making do with limited resources, to finding creative solutions when the obvious path wasn't available. I was comfortable with hard work because I had watched my parents build a good life through patience and persistence rather than shortcuts or privileges. By my 3rd year, I had found my stride. I was earning decent grades, had developed genuine friendships, and had begun to see a future for myself that bridged the gap between where I came from and where I was going. I chose to study journalism, drawn by the idea of telling stories that might help other small-town dreamers see possibilities beyond their own horizons. The summer I returned to Madas after my 3rd year, everything looked smaller than I remembered. The main street seemed narrower, the buildings lower, the pace of life almost impossibly slow after the constant motion of Delhi. But smaller didn't mean lesser. I saw things I had missed before: the intricate social networks that supported every family through good times and bad, the deep knowledge my father carried about machinery and manufacturing, the sophisticated emotional intelligence my mother used to manage a classroom full of children from different backgrounds and abilities. I also saw myself differently in the context of home. I was no longer just Priya from Banyan Street. I was Priya who had survived in Delhi, who had learned to navigate a world beyond the hills that surrounded our town. Children looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and awe. Parents asked me about opportunities for their own children. Young women my age wanted to know how I had managed to leave, what it was really like, whether they could do it too. It's not about being smarter or braver than anyone else. I told a group of teenage girls who gathered on our front porch one evening. It's about believing that you deserve to explore every possibility, even if it means being uncomfortable for a while. One girl, probably 15 or 16, raised her hand tentatively. But what if you fail? What if you can't handle it? I thought about that question for a long moment, remembering my own fears and the many times I had wondered if I was making a terrible mistake. Then you learn from failing and you try again, I said finally. Or you discover that your original path was right for you after all. But at least you'll know for certain, instead of spending your whole life wondering, what if? My final year at university passed in a blur of job applications, internship interviews, and thesis research. I had decided to write about the migration of young people from small towns to cities, interviewing dozens of students whose stories echoed my own in different keys. Through their experiences, I began to understand that my journey wasn't unique, but it also wasn't ordinary. Each person who leaves their small town carries a different constellation of hopes, fears, and obligations. Some of my interview subjects planned to return home after graduation, armed with new skills and perspectives that they hoped would benefit their communities. Others, like me, were still figuring out how to honor their roots while building lives in new soil. A few had cut ties entirely with their hometowns, finding the expectations and limitations too constraining for the people they had become.